The rain was merciless that night, the kind that seemed to wash away everything. The noise, the pain, the past. Ethan gripped the steering wheel tightly as thunder rolled across the sky. His wipers struggled to clear the windshield, slicing through sheets of water as he drove his old sedan down a nearly deserted road. He had just finished a double shift at the construction site, exhausted but determined to get home to his sleeping son. Little did he know, the storm wasn't the only thing waiting to break open that night. The sudden flash of movement caught his eye, a figure stumbling on the side of the road, collapsing onto the wet pavement. Without a second thought, Ethan slammed the brakes, the tires skidding on the slick road. He jumped out into the downpour, the cold rain biting through his jacket. When he reached her, he froze. The woman's dress was torn and soaked through, her face pale, her hands trembling as she clutched her stomach. She was pregnant and bleeding. For a second, time stood still. Her lips moved weakly, whispering through the storm, "Please, don't take me to a hospital." But before Ethan could question why, her eyes fluttered closed. Instinct took over. He lifted her into his arms, feeling the weight of her limp body and the fragility of the new life she carried. The rain fell harder as he carried her to his car, his son's frightened face visible through the fogged-up window. That if you believe in kindness, forgiveness, and second chances, please take a moment right now to like, comment, share, and subscribe. These stories are not just fiction. They're reminders that one act of compassion can change everything. Ethan laid the woman across the back seat, wrapping her with his jacket. His son, Liam, only 8 years old, looked on with wide, confused eyes. "Is she okay, Dad?" he asked softly. Ethan forced a nod, though fear was tightening his chest. He didn't know. He didn't even know who she was, until the light from a passing car briefly illuminated her face. His heart stopped. It was Claire. The woman who had once been his everything. The woman who vanished from his life 5 years ago without a word, leaving behind unanswered questions and a heart full of scars. He had moved on, or at least tried to. His days were filled with work and raising Liam, his nights with silence. But now, fate had brought her back, broken, bleeding, and terrified. In the middle of a storm, he drove through the rain, his thoughts spinning wildly. Why didn't she want to go to a hospital? Who hurt her? And whose baby was she carrying? The questions gnawed at him, but the urgency of the situation silenced them. When she groaned softly from the back seat, Ethan pressed harder on the gas, his pulse racing. The hospital. Nurses rushed out to help. Claire was taken away on a stretcher, her faint voice pleading for something Ethan couldn't quite hear. He stood there, soaked to the bone, staring as she disappeared through the emergency doors. Memories flooded back. Her laughter, their late-night drives, the night she said she loved him, and the day she walked away without explanation. Hours passed. Liam had fallen asleep in a chair beside him. Ethan sat motionless in the waiting area, every tick of the clock echoing the same fear. What if he'd lost her before he even got the answers he deserved? Finally, a doctor approached, his face grave but calm. "She's stable," he said. "You brought her just in time." Another few minutes, and his voice trailed off. Ethan exhaled in relief. But then came the next words that left him speechless. "Mr. Walker," the doctor said gently, "she's been asking for you. And there's something you should know about the baby." Ethan's world tilted. He followed the doctor down a quiet hallway, his heart pounding so hard he could barely breathe. When he entered the room, Claire looked fragile under the harsh fluorescent lights, her face pale, but her eyes full of tears. For a moment, neither spoke. The sound of the rain against the window filled the silence between them. Then she whispered, "Ethan, I never stopped thinking about you." Her voice trembled, a mix of pain and relief. She reached for his hand, and though his instinct was to pull away, he couldn't. There was something in her eyes, the same warmth he once knew, but shadowed by guilt. "I was pregnant when I left," she continued, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I was scared, Ethan. My father had arranged a marriage for me after we broke up. He threatened to take everything from me if I didn't obey. I wanted to tell you, but I thought disappearing was the only way to protect you and our baby." Ethan's mind went blank. "Our baby." The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Claire nodded weakly. "He's 8 now? His name is Liam." The room seemed to spin. Ethan stumbled back, gripping the edge of the chair for support. He looked toward the doorway, where his son stood, rubbing his eyes, confused by the noise. Claire followed his gaze, and her hand flew to her mouth as she saw the boy. Her voice broke. "Ethan, he's ours?" The truth hit her with devastating clarity. The boy she had longed for every night, the child she had mourned in silence, was standing just a few feet away, alive, safe, and raised by the man she once loved. She sobbed, the kind of cry that came from years of regret. Ethan felt something inside him crumble. Anger, confusion, heartbreak, all tangled with the aching love he'd buried deep. He sat beside her, unable to speak. For years, he'd imagined this moment, what he'd say if he ever saw her again. But now, there were no words strong enough to bridge the years they'd lost. The only thing he could do was take her hand. "You should rest," he murmured softly. "We'll talk later." That night, as he watched her sleep, Ethan thought about everything. The loneliness, the struggles, the quiet nights he spent wondering what went wrong. He had built walls around his heart, telling himself that forgiveness was weakness. But now, seeing her fragile and broken, he realized forgiveness wasn't about forgetting the past. It was about freeing yourself from it. The next morning, Claire woke to find Liam sitting by her bed, holding a cup of juice. He smiled shyly. "Dad said you're sick. I hope you get better soon." She looked at him through tears, unable to say a word. Every smile, every gesture, every bit of kindness he showed reminded her of Ethan, and of the life they were meant to share. When Ethan returned with breakfast, she finally found the courage to speak. "I didn't deserve your help last night," she said quietly. "After everything I did." Ethan shook his head. "You didn't need to deserve it. You just needed it." That simple line broke her completely. She wept in his arms, not out of sorrow but relief. The kind of release that comes when you finally stop running from the truth. For years, she had carried guilt and secrets, believing some wounds could never heal. But Ethan's compassion in the rain had changed everything. Days later, as she recovered, they talked for hours about the past, about Liam, about what could still be salvaged. The pain didn't disappear overnight, but something stronger began to take its place. Forgiveness, and a fragile hope for the future. On the day Claire was discharged, the rain returned, softer this time, almost cleansing. They stood by the hospital doors, watching the drizzle fall over the city. Ethan looked at her, then at Liam, and for the first time in years, he felt peace. Some storms, he realized, don't come to destroy. They come to clear the way. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to support more stories of love, courage, and second chances. And before you go, comment below. Do you believe that true love can survive even after years of pain and silence? Because sometimes, forgiveness isn't the end of a story. It's the beginning of a new one.